You Only fan members, please check out our Facebook page. Join, tell your stories, be kind, be nice.
We've learned more in the previous 50 years about sleep than we did in the previous 5,000.
Dr. Matthew Walker has spent his entire life studying one thing: the science of sleep.
If I take a healthy young male and I limit them to, let's say, 4 or 5 hours of sleep, their level of testosterone drops to someone who is 10 years their senior. So a lack of sleep will age a man by a decade.
We dive deep into what sleep is actually doing to your brain and body, and why most people are walking around completely unaware of the damage.
When you are not getting sufficient sleep, suicidal thoughts increase, suicidal planning, suicide attempts increase, and tragically, suicide completion also increases as well.
This might be the most important episode you hear all year.
Hopefully, the You Only followers out there checked out our 5-part series called The Quiet Mechanics. What a great series, and thank you for turning back in. Today's title: Sleep is the Habit Beneath Habits, everyone. Welcome back, and today we are building a bridge between atomic habits, the power of habit, it didn't start with you, and the science masterpiece, Why We Sleep. And that's what today's episode is really based around, is sleep and neuroscience. Because here's the truth nobody says out loud. You cannot build atomic habits on a sleep-deprived brain. You cannot rewrite generational trauma on 4 hours of fragmented rest. You cannot discipline your way out of biology. And sleep, everyone, is biology. James Clear teaches us that habits are the compound interest of self-improvement. Tiny changes repeated daily, identity-based shifts. But here's what Matthew Walker proves through decades of neuroscience research. Sleep is the nightly architecture of the identity. And that's what I'm working on right now for everyone, is identity. During deep non-REM sleep, your brain physically rewires neural pathways. During REM sleep, emotional memories are processed and softened. Walker calls it overnight therapy. And that phrase alone should stop you in your tracks. Because let's talk numbers. Adults who sleep fewer than 6 hours per night are 30% more likely to develop depression. I know, I've seen a friend in high school go through this. 1 week of sleeping 5 hours per night reduces testosterone levels in healthy men by up to 15%. And that's a big deal right now because every generation that's born are born with a lower testosterone count. The immune system drops dramatically after even 1 night of 4 hours sleep, everyone. The amygdala, your fear center, becomes 60% more reactive when sleep deprived. Now think about it. Didn't start with you. I love that book because it has to do with generational trauma. Mark Wolin talks about inherited trauma patterns. You Only audience, here's Mark Wolin.
Others is the son's path to the father is blocked when the mother doesn't like the father. The son can't make that journey on his own to the father. He needs mother's support. He needs the mother. She's the linchpin to connect them. And if she doesn't like the father, it often doesn't happen. I have a blog on my website called A Worried Mother's Guide to Helping Her Troubled Son, which is helping mothers help their sons get back to their father.
Wolin also teaches hypervigilance, abandonment fears, and emotional shutdown. What happens when a person already is wired for anxiety but is sleep deprived? The volume gets turned up, everyone. Charles Duhigg explains in The Power of Habit that habits operate in loops, cues, routine, and reward. And here's Peter Attia interviewing Charles Duhigg. Peter Attia will be in episode 4 of this series.
Help a person think about how to gauge the magnitude of the reward.
So the first thing to do is to say, I have to give myself a reward, which is actually harder than it sounds. So if you think about how most people start exercising, instead of having this, like, I'm going to take a nice shower, I'm going to drink a smoothie, they go for a run and they get home and they're late, right? Now I'm rushing. I'm taking as quick a shower as I can because I got to throw breakfast on the table for the kids, and I'm running late to take them to school. I'm actually punishing myself for exercising, and my brain pays attention to that punishment. It says, I don't want to exercise anymore. This is a sucker's game. So the first and most important step is to actually recognize I have to reward myself, and I have to create the time or the space or the resources to let myself have that reward and enjoy that reward. Now, the next question that you asked, how big should it be?
Yeah.
One of the things that we know is that one of the most powerful impacts on this is how immediate that reward is. That in general, if I give myself a reward right away, if I eat sugar and it tastes good, it gives me that boost as soon as it hits my tongue, that's going to be a more powerful reinforcement than if it's something where I'm working out every day and 3 weeks from now, my muscles are going to be stronger. So the more immediate we can make the reward at first, the better. And we can oftentimes have a smaller reward if it happens quickly than having to have a bigger reward that comes later in time. Now, I mentioned, though, that this is at first, and this is really important because, as I mentioned before, what happens with rewards is they almost always, if a behavior becomes a habit, they almost always move from extrinsic to intrinsic, right? So at first, the reward I'm giving myself is I'm letting myself have a smoothie. And that smoothie might not be
By the way,
healthy.
you have got me very curious about your smoothie situation. You bring it up a lot.
I do.
There's something going on in Santa Barbara.
But over time, as you mentioned, what's going to happen is your craving for that smoothie is going to go down as your brain begins to realize, oh, actually, when I run, I feel great afterwards. Your brain starts saying, I don't actually need the smoothie. I don't crave the smoothie quite as much. I don't need that smoothie because I feel good afterwards. That's the reward. So the reward has moved from extrinsic to intrinsic. And that's a really important transition because that means the behavior becomes self-reinforcing without external rewards.
I've personally read and listened to The Power of Habit about 200 times. It is one of the best books I've ever come across. Sleep disruption becomes its own habit loop. Stress is cue. Scrolling or late night stimulation is the routine. Dopamine hit is the reward. The next day, exhaustion increases stress, and the loop repeats. The habit beneath all habits is whether you protect your sleep window, everyone. Matthew Walker shares a powerful story in Why We Sleep about a patient suffering from severe PTSD. When their REM sleep was restored through structured sleep discipline, the intensity of their traumatic flashbacks decreased. Why? Because REM sleep reduces neuroadrenaline levels in the brain, allowing emotional memories to be replayed without the same chemical change. It is literally trauma processing without conscious effort. And I think that's what our brains tend to do a lot of times when we have these types of traumas, is that it literally is trying to put the effort in to fix the situation all day long. And that's what drives people into depression, hypervigilance, disassociation. You only audience, here's Dr. Matt Walker.
There is a small fraction of 1% of the population that has a special gene that allows them to survive on about 5 hours of sleep. And most people, when I tell them this, they say, I think
have that.
I'm one of those people.
Yeah.
The chances of you being, you're much more likely, for example, to be struck by lightning in your lifetime, the odds of which are, I think, about 1 in 12,500, than you are to have this incredibly rare gene that means you can survive on something around 5 hours of sleep.
Here's where Atomic Habits locks in. James Clear says, every action you take is a vote for the type of person you wish to become. When you go to bed at the same time every night, you're casting a vote for your regulated nervous system. When you protect your circadian rhythm, you're voting for emotional stability. When you dim lights an hour before bed, you're voting for melatonin production over dopamine stimulation. And blue lights on our phone affect all those hormones. The best sleep specialists in the world agree on disciplined practices. Consistent sleep and wake time, even on weekends. No caffeine after 1 p.m. Cool bedroom temperature between 60 and 67 degrees Fahrenheit. No alcohol before bed because it suppresses REM sleep. No blue light 1 hour before sleep. Morning sunlight exposure within 30 minutes of waking to anchor circadian rhythm. These are not preferences. These are biological commands that tell the body, hey, this is the routine that normal human beings that forage for food, get up and have to survive. These are the things that they do. But we're in systems now to where we're not foraging for food or we're not doing our animal instincts. So our circadian rhythm is getting out of whack. In Japan, researchers have been experimenting with cognitive dream decoding using neuroimaging to reconstruct visual imagery from REM sleep patterns. While still in the early stages, studies have shown partial image reconstruction accuracy from brain scans. That means your dreaming brain is actively creating structured, measurable data. Dreams are not random chaos, they are cognitive integration sessions. It's like your brain is integrating to get ready to, it's like pretty much it's categorizing all the thoughts and memories that you had that day and then compartmentalizing where they go in your brain. Audience members, remember the average person spends 26 years sleeping in bed, but if we account for how long it takes someone to fall asleep, it's on average 33 years. Mattress comfort is important. There's a moment in Atomic Habits where James Clear describes the British cycling team transforming from mediocre to world champions by improving tiny variables: seat ergonomics, hand washing, pillow quality for sleep. Yes, pillow quality, everyone. Ain't that awesome? Marginal gains. Now imagine applying marginal gains to sleep. 10 minutes early to bed, slightly darker room, slightly cool temperatures, slightly earlier caffeine cutoff. Over months, the brain compounds those changes, and it's huge. It's huge KPIs, key performance indicators of where your life's headed in the next 5 years. How am I doing every single day because I'm writing my KPIs down? I'm keeping great time management on the life for the future me. And that's what this podcast is really for, everyone. Yes, I am helping myself. Yes, I am helping you. But in reality, we all who are coming back to this space are learning to develop our future selves every single day by just taking a moment and listening to someone tell us about regulating ourselves to the point that we're amazing. So, Mark Wolin talks about inherited trauma phrases. I don't belong. I'm not safe. Something bad is going to happen. When you are sleep deprived, the brain defaults to threat scanning because it don't know the difference. You're literally telling it this stuff and thinking it, and it's hearing it out loud in your mind. The negative bias intensifies, so unresolved ancestral narratives feel louder. But during REM sleep, emotional tone decouples from memory. Over time, the brain learns safety, everyone. And that's what I'm trying to get at here. We need our brains to feel safe so that our sleep patterns can come back to our natural state. Harvard Medical School research shows that individuals sleeping fewer than 5 hours have a 200 to 300% increased risk of heart attack or stroke. UC Berkeley's studies demonstrate that deep sleep clears beta-amyloid proteins associated with Alzheimer's disease. And Alzheimer's is type 3 diabetes, so it has to do with sugars. And I also know that if someone starts like around 35 to 45 starts fighting in their sleep, people are starting to realize that that is like 10 to 20 years out of the first instances of dementia. Is that not crazy? Check that out. I should have included it, sorry. Sleep is not rest. It is maintenance. It is detox. It is emotional recalibration. Here's the quote that belongs in this episode. We are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not an act, but a habit. Often attributed to Aristotle, everyone. Check out this clip on goal-based habits versus identity habits.
Immediate goal-based habits versus identity-based habits. Immediate goal-based habits are going to be habits that are designed to bring you a specific outcome as you do them. So each and every time you do them. It might be you want to develop a habit of getting 60 minutes of zone 2 cardio each day, or perhaps, 3-4 times a week. Every time you do it, you could check off a little box and you'd say, okay, I did it. You met the goal. That would be an immediate goal-based habit. That is different than identity-based habits, where there's a larger overarching theme to the habit, where you're trying to become a fit person, or you're somebody who wants to be an athlete or something of that sort. It's where you start to attach some sort of larger picture about yourself or what it means for you to do that habit.
I'd add this: stability is not a mood. It is a sleep schedule. If you've listened to episodes like Atomic Habits or The Power of Habit, you already know identity change is layered. But why we sleep shows us the neurological machinery underneath identity. And it didn't start with you reminds us we may be carrying patterns that require gentleness, not grit. And a lot of us stick with the grit because that's actually a trauma pattern learned from our caretakers. This is to a You Only fan member named Ty. I want to say thank you for your courageous comment. When you shared your story, you reminded everyone listening that vulnerability is strength. I'm wishing you peace, consistency, and a deep restorative sleep, my friend. To the listeners in Chicago, Los Angeles, Charleston, Miami, and our incredible community in Maharashtra, India, I hope I didn't butcher that name too much, sorry. You're part of this conversation. You are part of the growth. And it's crazy that in India, that's one of my biggest growths. I appreciate every single one of you out there listening. Sleep is not laziness, it is leverage. It is the habit that makes all habits possible. It is therapy without talking. It is trauma integration without reliving. It is discipline, the biological level. So if you're driving in your car right now, or if you're laying in your bed, when you turn the lights off earlier than usual, remember, you are not just going to bed. And please don't shut the lights off in your car if it's nighttime. You are building identity. You are calming inherited storms. You are stretching and strengthening your frontal lobe. You are protecting your heart. You are clearing your mind. You are investing in tomorrow's version of you. And that's important for all of us because mental health and sleep go hand in hand. A large meta analysis of 54 randomized trials, 10,196 adults. This study was done in 2004, found that interventions which improve sleep quality led to significantly lower depression and anxiety symptoms compared with control conditions. Although effects on stress were less clear, that's significant though, because our habits, shutting the phone off for an hour, not eating, 4 hours prior to you actually getting 8 hours of sleep, it allows the body a time to fast. But I do believe it also allows your stomach to, get ready for the next day as well. Here's where this gets deeper, you only fan members. During non-REM deep sleep, your brain physically strengthens neural pathways tied to learning. Think about that for your kids. During REM sleep, emotional memories are reprocessed. Walker calls REM sleep overnight therapy. You've already heard that sleep restores energy. That's basic. What most people don't understand is that sleep is biological negotiation between survival and long-term identity stability. Our identity is important. Let's go cellular. During deep, slow wave sleep, your brain cells actually shrink in size by up to 60%. This isn't metaphorical. The interstitial space between neurons expands. That expression activates the glyphatic system, a waste clearance network that flushes out neurotoxic byproducts like beta-amyloid and tauroproteins. These proteins, when accumulated, are strongly associated with Alzheimer's disease and cognitive decline. Translation: when you skip sleep, you are skipping neurological sanitation time. But here's where it gets a little more intense. REM sleep is not just dreaming. REM is emotional memory reconsolidation. During REM, the brain replays emotionally charged experiences while suppressing neuroadrenaline, the fight flight chemical. That means the memory is activated without the full stress response. Over time, this reduces emotional intensity. Now imagine chronic REM deprivation. Alcohol suppresses REM, everyone. So does fragmented sleep. So does chronic stress. You're left with emotionally activated memories that never properly reconsolidate. This is where trauma disorders intersect sleep science. Studies show individuals with PTSD have disrupted REM cycles and evaluated nighttime systematic nervous system activity. Their nervous systems never fully power down, which means their trauma never fully integrates. Now, go even deeper. Recent psychiatric sleep research shows that sleep deprivation can temporarily increase dopamine levels in the stratum. That sounds good until you understand what it means. Elevated dopamine under stress deprivation increases risk taking behavior, impulsivity, and in vulnerable individuals can precipitate manic or hypomanic episodes. This is why bipolar disorder is strongly linked to circadian rhythm disruption. One lost night can trigger instability in susceptible individuals. And I came across some research that said that bipolarism was caused by generational inbreeding. Sleep is mood stabilizer infrastructure. Let's talk about borderline personality features under sleep loss. Research indicates emotional dysregulation severity increases proportionally with sleep fragmentation. That doesn't mean sleep causes personality disorders, everybody, but it intensifies its trait expression. Impulsivity, emotional vitality, fear of abandonment, these traits become amplified when frontal lobe inhibition weakens. Sleep is not therapy, but without it, therapy struggles. Now let's go chronobiology. Your body operates on peripheral clocks, everyone. Not just one clock in your brain, but clocks in your liver, pancreas, heart, and your tissue. When you stay up under artificial light at 1 a.m., you are telling your pancreas it is still daytime. That affects insulin sensitivity. That's why chronic short sleepers show higher rates of type 2 diabetes independent of weight. It's not just calories, it's clock confusion. James Clear talks about identity change through repetition. Here's the deeper biological angle. Repeated sleep, timing consistency strengthens circadian gene expression. There are literal clock genes, purr, cry, BMAL1, that regulate metabolic neurological timing. When sleep is consistent, those genes synchronize. When erratic, gene expression destabilizes. Identity is not just psychological. It's genetic timing consistency, everyone. Now let's examine one of the newest 2025 developments in sleep research: targeted memory reactivation during sleep. Scientists have begun experimenting with subtle auditory cues during slow wave sleep to enhance memory consolidation. If a sound is paired with learning material during the day and replayed softly during deep sleep, recall improves measurably. That means sleep is programmable reinforcement time. It's wild, right? When I came across this information, I was like, I have to share this with my fans. I'm like, this is awesome. Imagine applying that to language learning, emotional affirmation, even trauma therapy support in the future. We are entering an era where sleep is no longer passive, it's interactive. Now, let's go somewhere even fewer people go: economic sleep deprivation. The World Economic Forum estimates sleep deprivation costs the U.S. economy over $400 billion annually in productivity losses, accidents, healthcare costs, and decision errors. And remember this, everybody: 500 near misses on the job will eventually equal one major accident. Fatigued leaders make riskier financial decisions. Sleep restricted physicians have higher error rates. Military research shows reaction time impaired after 17-hour awake mirrors a blood alcohol concentration of 0.05%. You would not drink before brain surgery, right? Yet we normalize sleep deprivation. Now, spiritually, Ecclesiastes 5:12 says, "The sleep of a laborer is sweet." The line implies something profound. Rest is tied to honest labor and regulated rhythm. Modern society has reversed it, everybody. We chase stimulation, energy drinks, coffee, and collapse from exhaustion. If you want deep habit insight, here it is. James Clear emphasizes environment design, the deeper layer of neurological predictability. When you go to sleep at the same time every night, your brain begins releasing melatonin predictively. Core body temperature begins dropping predictively. Growth hormone pulses predictably. You remove biological resistance, everybody. Most people think discipline is force. True discipline is alignment. Let's go into coping mechanisms at an advanced level. If someone has trauma-related hyperarousal, simple: go to bed earlier. Advice won't work. They need nervous system regulation first. And if you need to learn nervous system regulation, go back and check out our 5-part series, The Quiet Mechanics. Here are deeper interventions you could try, everyone. 10 minutes of non-sleep during rest. It's called NSDR, or yoga nidra during the day to reduce baseline symptomatic tone. Evening magnesium glycinate supplementation under medical guidance supports parasympathetic activity, controlled nasal breathing to increase vagal tone. And remember, your vagal nerve is your biggest nerve in your cranium. Trauma-informed therapy focused on somatic regulation, eliminating late night high conflict conversations. Avoiding doom scrolling before emotional activation before bed alters REM tone. Here's something powerful. Slow wave sleep is highest in the first half of the night. REM is concentrated in the second half. If you cut your sleep short by waking early, you disproportionately lose REM. That means emotional integration suffers most. Chronic short sleepers are not just tired, they are emotionally under-processed. Now about James Clear's current trajectory. In recent years, he has shifted toward long-term systems thinking, not just individual habits, but cultural habit architecture. He speaks frequently about sustained identity shifts rather than quick transformations. He has emphasized that environment, community, and context drive behavior more than motivation. Sleep fits into the framework as a keystone system. What researchers call a keystone behavior, meaning it creates cascading positive effects. Better sleep improves diet compliance. It improves workout consistency. It reduces emotional eating. It enhances patience in relationships. It increases follow through. One key habit: my trauma survivors live in hypervigilance. Hypervigilance disrupts sleep. Disrupted sleep amplifies hypervigilance. It becomes a feedback loop. Breaking that loop is not weakness, it is biological bravery. When Psalms 127 says, "He grants sleep to those he loves," it implies surrender. Sleep requires surrender. You cannot remain in control and fall asleep simultaneously. That may be the hardest discipline of all. When you protect your sleep, you protect your frontal lobe, emotional regulation, cardiovascular health, metabolic stability, hormonal balance, memory integration, impulse control, long-term cognitive preservation. You are not just resting, you are investing in neural longevity. And here is the deepest truth most people are not ready to hear. You cannot outwork biology, you cannot outdiscipline circadian rhythm, and you cannot self-help your way past chronic sleep deprivation. Sleep is not optional maintenance. It is identity infrastructure. Till next time. You Only fan members, here's Dr. Matt Walker, prominent British neuroscientist and professor at UC Berkeley.